Everyone. Today I'm going to continue on in my discussions of the Michael Crichton movies of the 1970s, what I call Michael Crichton summer movies, and they're very entertaining, have interesting premises. Today I'm going to talk about his 1972 novel, uh, The Terminal Man, which is part of this Crichton Omnibus edition that was made into a 1974 film, The Terminal Man. And it was not, Michael Crichton didn't have anything to do with this film. Actually, he did have something to do with it because he was originally writing the screenplay for Warner Brothers, the studio that bought the property. And but they didn't like his screenplay, so eventually they turned it over to Mike Hodges, who had had a estimable hit with Get Carter. He also made Pulp. Those were his first two feature films. He'd worked on TV. So he wrote and directed it, the adaptation of Michael Crichton's Terminal Man. And it is a story with a warning, as all of Michael Crichton stories are, a cautionary tale, this time dealing with experimental surgery, a new procedure that's being tried out for the first time on a human. It had dozens of surgeries done on monkeys. The patient has been in an accident. He has, as a result, he has brain damage. He has epileptic fits. He seems normal, but then he has these seizures and he blacks out. And these are seizures accompanied by uncontrollable rage and violence. But these seizures are also accompanied by a psychosis in which he has become obsessed that machines are taking over the world and that human beings are becoming machines. So this pacemaker is going to control these impulses. It will attempt to, the point of it is to end these epileptic seizures, but again, not dealing with the psychosis. So this intermelding of this computer brain that's being installed in his nervous system has with electrodes, so different impulses, and they can control the technicians can control these impulses. The brain and the machine are now interconnected. He is actually a human being becoming a machine, or a machine analyzing what this human brain wants. So there's unforeseen circumstances. This is obviously a warning that we have to really watch out what we do. In 1972, heart transplants and all increases in experimental surgery, but that involves a lot of pressure in this surgical hospital to come up with another new thing. Have they thought it out in full? They have not. George Segal plays the victim, or the patient who is actually the victim. And this is one of those roles when George Segal was an A-list movie star, and always very audiences, the kind of movie star audiences identify with, and he uses his strength as an actor, which is a kind of playfulness, but we see a dark side to this playfulness. A very effective performance in a difficult role. Joan Hackett plays his psychiatrist. She's against it. She's against this experimental surgery. She thinks it's going to do more harm than good, and advises him at the last minute, you don't have to do this. You can still do it. But he's in full agreement to go along with the operation. Joan Hackett is superb in this movie. She died way too young, but she has some memorable roles, and this is one of them in Terminal Man. And of course, what develops in so many of these kind of stories is the Frankenstein Monster. We saw it with Yul Brynner in Crichton's Westworld. And I've been watching some early David Cronenberg films that are chronologically by the year and come a little bit later in these films than these Crichton films. And he also, I just watched Scanners, and we have the mad scientist in Patrick McGowan's character, also experimenting on human beings. But with Cronenberg, it's more gothic. It doesn't seem plausible. His scenarios don't seem at least plausible, and they're geared more towards body horror and showing gross out scenes in the most powerful way they can. With Crichton, there's a sense of realism that, you know, these things, they might not have been occurring in 1970, but they could. It seems within the realm of possibility. Now, as I said, Crichton has taken off the project Mike Hodges brought in, and he sticks very closely in his screenplay. Up until the final act, he sticks very close to the novel and in his screenplay. Much of the dialogue comes out of the novel, but he's much different than Crichton in directing style in Westworld and Pursuit. And even Robert Wise's adaptation of Andromeda Strain, in that Hodges is a very stylish film, and you could see this really as an art film. I mean, it's visually very interesting. Even though he sticks close to the screenplay, he adds little touches here and there that are not in the book. Sticks close to the book. He wrote, as he did write the screenplay. So the movie was panned almost universally. I did find a couple of contemporaneous reviews that liked it, but on Wikipedia it says that Stanley Kubrick and Terrence Malick both praised the film and encouraged Hodges in his method of working on Terminal Man. And as I said, he does change the ending. The ending in the book is basically thriller kind of stuff. Hodges adds a kind of religious dimension to it. It really surprised me because of the fact that I had just read the book. A Roman Catholic, Siegel mentions early on that he had been brought up Roman Catholic, doesn't have any religion now, but then we get very much a kind of Christian kind of denouement and climax and denouement in the film. Reading some interviews with Hodges that I found online, he too was brought up Catholic, very devout, left the church behind, but of course, anybody who's been brought up as a child in a very with a kind of religious upbringing, Hodges calls it indoctrination, is never going to leave you. I think this really adds to the film. The critics did like it. They found the ending pretentious, but I found it very interesting. And the whole look of the film, Hodges wanted to film in black and white. Warner Brothers refused. Nobody wanted to watch movies in black and white. So he did film in color, but it has it's sort of black and white in color. There's not a lot of color palette to it. Uses some good locations. The sterility of the medical facility, but then there's a party and it's in one of Frank Lloyd Wright's famous houses in LA, and they used Forest Lawn Cemetery as well later on. But the film again was a failure for Hodges. It would be 6 years before he had another feature film. In fact, he has no credits on IMDb except for an uncredited writing on Exorcist 2. But 6 years before his next film, which would be Flash Gordon, another very stylish kind of based on obviously a serial, Solitary Ronin's favorite film. A lot of fun. This is the 4K version of Flash Gordon. And Hodges' first film was Get Carter, Pope, both with Michael Caine. Get Carter was a hit movie. It's become probably Hodges' most famous film. Pope got very limited release, but then it became, through the years, and even at the time of its release, it got sort of a secondary release in some theaters, and all of a sudden it was getting good reviews. I saw it when it came out. I liked Pulp a lot. But the Hodges was given the full treatment in Noir City magazine. He is given they give awards out to modern noir master, and this is Hodges back in the day, and he's still alive. And he eventually but he only made 9 features, I believe, in total. And with big gaps in between, he did do TV movies. He wrote stage plays, and in recent years he's become a novelist. And he had a career resurgence with Couprier, with Clive Owen, but again, this is probably get Carter. I think BFI is releasing this in 4K. So this is kind of an interesting comparison between Crichton and Mike Hodges. And in fact, Hodges' movies, and I have not seen probably his last 5 movies. I've never seen Couprier. He seems to be he would be a very interesting subject as a director who has been probably unfairly overlooked through the years. But getting back to Crichton, the next film I'll be discussing will be Coma, a film that is based on a novel by Robin Cook. So this is Crichton's adaptation of somebody else's novel, which should be pretty interesting. And then The Great Train Robbery will be the final in this series of 6. Crichton himself left films for a few years, I think maybe 4 or 5 years, in which he wrote, spent part of the time writing The Great Train Robbery, which I'm going to be reading next. And I'll also be reading Robin Cook's Coma before I watch the film. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.